More than 250 feet below the North Atlantic, the site is difficult to reach and extremely dangerous. The road to the Andria Doria can be long and difficult. For us, it's going to take us 14 or 15 hours to get all the way out to the wreck site. As a result, divers usually come out here for multiple day trips, 2 days, 3 days, sometimes even more. That's weather permitting. Because of the Doria's fame and because of the challenge of her depth, she's become a mecca for divers.
Throughout the years, more than 12 divers, all of them experienced and lost their lives diving the Andria Doria. Some of them were first-timers, some of them were experienced guys, some of them were in pursuit of that elusive memento or souvenir of the wreck. Ultimately, all of them paid with their life for this badge of honor to dive the Doria.
She's not only deep and dangerous. Inside, she's a virtual maze. 10 decks, 31 public rooms, and more than 1,000 cabins linked by hundreds of hallways and stairwells. And she's completely on her side. If we're going to get new evidence for this mystery, we've got to go deep inside the wreck. Let me give you an idea of what we're up against. We're going to drop down to the promenade, swim down to a doorway, drop through the doorway, over to a stairwell, down 2 decks through the stairwell, come out to the foyer, across the foyer, through another doorway, across the dining room, down to a corridor at 230 feet. At the end of that corridor, that's where we wanted to be. Starting to get an idea how complex this is? The wreck is also highly unstable. 50 years of deterioration have taken their toll. She's constantly changing, and so are the hazards.
More than 20 feet in height and 6 feet wide.
To learn about the latest conditions of the wreck, we've brought along one of the most experienced Doria divers we know, Gary Gentile.
Right here.
Everything that we see, everything that is superstructure that is above the main deck level from here on down is gone. It's all fallen straight down right into the seabed.
You're saying that every one of these decks are gone?
Yes, I am. Every deck from here up is gone, and these 2 decks are the 2 decks that have hinged downward and essentially sealed off the remainder of the interior of the wreck.
Gary makes it perfectly clear. Our first dive has to be an exterior survey of the wreck to assess the deterioration.
It's impossible to predict.
At first light, we've reached the wreck site. A thick fog blankets the dive boat Eagle's Nest. Strong currents, limited visibility, freezing temperatures, all par for the course when diving the Andria Doria. This is North Atlantic wreck dive. It's deep, it's dark, it's dangerous. We're going to have difficulty navigating. We're not going to see a whole lot. It's going to be very difficult to discern.
How you doing, buddy? Just about ready to go?
Yeah, I am. Richie and I are on our first dive to the Andria Doria, the Italian ocean liner that sank 60 miles off Nantucket Island in July 1956. The Mount Everest of wreck diving lies on her side, 250 feet beneath the Atlantic. Because the wreck's always changing, we're going to survey the exterior and assess the deterioration. At 150 feet, the wreck begins to appear out of the darkness. Portholes, twisted railings. She's almost unrecognizable as the grande dame she once was. But some landmarks remain. The grand promenade deck, more than 200 feet long, once lined with sunny deck chairs. It's now completely broken in half, folded down in on itself. And the Winter Garden, one of the Doria's first-class lounges. The window frames are still intact, but inside, the walls have collapsed. The architecture and innovative designs that made her world famous are gone. She's now nothing but twisted wreckage. We are out of time. We have to head back to the surface.
Boy, some change, huh, Richie?
The wreck has actually folded in on itself, and in some aspects I think it's going to provide new areas of exploration, but I really think it's going to hinder our research into finding out exactly what happened on the night of the collision.
On our next dive, we're not only going to honor the Diana family's request, we're going to attempt to penetrate the wreck and locate the point of impact. It's a part of the Doria no one's ever seen, and it won't be easy. After meeting with survivors and collecting eyewitness accounts of the accident, we're back on the wreck of the Andria Doria. On our first dive, we surveyed the deterioration. The Doria is collapsing fast, which could make penetrating the wreck more difficult and dangerous. On our second dive, we have two objectives. One, we'll place the memory bottle for the Diana family on the wreck. Two, we'll try to make it inside and reach the point of impact. The point of impact may still hold evidence that was never seen by investigators. The size and shape of the damage may tell us more about the collision. But reaching the point of impact means diving to over 250 feet. Going that deep while breathing air pushes the body to the very limits of human endurance.
The Andria Doria has a well-deserved reputation for being deep, dark, and dangerous. Under the best of conditions, it's an extremely challenging dive.
The air that we breathe is composed of two gases, oxygen and nitrogen. For divers diving deep, each of these gases poses a problem. Oxygen becomes toxic, and nitrogen becomes narcotic.
Diving air to the Andria Doria is similar to having 5 martinis on an empty stomach.
Nitrogen narcosis. It's called rapture of the deep. Like alcohol, the nitrogen in the diver's blood can make him disoriented and confused. And the high level of oxygen in his blood can become poisonous. The diver can convulse and drown. So the way we address this problem is to the diver's breathing gas mixture, we add helium. Helium is a gas that's non-toxic and it's non-narcotic. And by substituting helium into the mix, we reduce the amount of oxygen and the amount of nitrogen. These three gases in the diver's breathing gas mixture are called trimix. Trimix reduces the risk of both nitrogen narcosis and oxygen toxicity. It's safer. It gives you a clear head.
When you dive trimix to a wreck at 250 feet like the Andria Doria, the wreck opens up. You're able to see clearly and remember your dive.
It's the advantage we'll need to maneuver deep inside the wreck and to come back alive. The next day, we enjoy bright sun and calm seas. Great dive conditions. For our second dive, we're joined by Carrie Bassetti, Richie's fiance. She's attempting her first dive on the Doria, and it's got Richie a bit nervous. Half the deaths on the Doria were first-time divers. If she makes it, she will be only the 13th woman in history to reach the wreck. It's taken Carrie 2 years of training to get here. But this dive will take her far deeper than she's ever gone before. As we make our 4-minute descent to the wreck of the Andria Doria, Richie keeps a close eye on Carrie. We reach the high side of the wreck, and with an all okay, we set out in search of an entry point inside. On our first dive, we stayed near the upper levels on the hull of the wreck, at about 190 feet. Richie and Carrie stay at 190 and move towards the bow, while I begin dropping down towards the ocean floor. 220. 230. 240. At 250 feet, I reach the debris field. The deterioration is astounding. The wreck's insides have spilled out onto the seafloor. Jagged metal shards are everywhere. The extreme depth and alien landscape make it easy to get disoriented or become ensnared on a piece of the wreckage. Here's where Trimix can save your life. It keeps you focused and in control of your dive. As we search out an entry point, every prospect becomes a dead end. The deterioration seems to have pinched off every possible way inside. Even with Trimix, we limit our bottom time to 25 minutes. It's time to start back to the surface. On my way back to the anchor line, I find a porthole directly above the collision area. Not far from here is where Angelina, Vittoria, and Biagio Diana died. This is where I place the memory bottle and leave behind a piece of the Diana family forever. Our second dive has been bittersweet. For Carrie, it was an incredible achievement. She has become the 13th woman in history to dive the Doria, earning her place among an elite group of world-class divers.
I made it.
For Richie and me, it was a bust. We couldn't get inside the wreck, but we were able to accomplish one of our objectives.
We got up directly above the area of the collision. We took the bottle that we got from Angelina and Jerry, put it into a space where it would drop down into the collision area. Nobody will ever disturb it.
We've honored the Diana family and the memory of their loss, but we still haven't reached the point of impact. The deterioration is preventing us from getting deep inside. We're going to make one final attempt to penetrate the wreck.
And John, we discussed the dive plan. Let's go over it one more time.
Right, you and I are going to try and split up. We're going to try and cover a little bit more ground. I'm going to head up towards the bow and see what I can find out there that might give us some more information about the sinking. You're going to head inside and try and see if you can get down towards the area of the impact.
Let's keep it tight, careful.
Right.
Any problem, flash your light, and we're out of there.
I like it.
Let's
go.
This is our last chance to unearth the mystery of the Andria Doria. We're on our third dive to the wreck of the Andria Doria. It's our last chance to reach the point of impact, the one location that has remained elusive since the day of the collision. At only 40 feet, the current picks up. It hits us like a freight train. It takes every bit of strength just to hold on and not be ripped off the line into oblivion. But at 80 feet, it shows no sign of weakening. We struggle for 15 minutes, but the current's too much. We have no choice. We'll have to abort our dive and return to the surface.
The water was cooking. The current was really rolling. It's one of those days where you kind of say, what am I doing here?
We had to change the dive plan on the fly. The current down there is roaring. It just seems that sometimes this wreck doesn't want to give anything up.
Often, wreck diving is man versus nature. And this time, nature wins.
So that means we gotta head back to land and we gotta find out more.
It's likely the point of impact may never be seen by human eyes. Still, what we saw on our 2 dives is invaluable to our investigation. We've collected video of the wreck and hundreds of visual references. But it's all in pieces. Between the lack of visibility and the huge size of the wreck, there's no way a diver can see the whole picture.
As a substantial foyer deck, of course, it's not.
But a maritime illustrator can.
I think the foyer deck is.
Using our video and information, he may be able to reconstruct an image of the entire wreck clearer than anything we could hope to see underwater. We're with maritime artist Ken Marshall. Now, Ken created a painting of the Andria Doria as she lay on the bottom back in 1991. And what we're trying to do is give him the information that he needs to update the painting.
Sadly, that's not what she's looking like as of last week.
Right. And I think most dramatically, the superstructure here, gone. See how that transitions there? It's like, there's nothing.
It's ripped.
You mentioned that it's just like 25 feet down from the high point of the wreck. The debris field seems to start to go out.
Actually, the entire hull has compressed about 5 feet, creating a massive debris field.
Gee. It's just not what I remember from before. It's just as if the wreck is melting away.
More structure. Ken's brought us a first draft of an updated Doria illustration. These are the plates from the We're hoping he can re-illustrate a more accurate picture of what the Doria looks like today. Though we were never able to reach the point of impact, we have helped maritime illustrator Ken Marshall capture the increasing deterioration of the wreck. In contrast to the wreck Ken first illustrated back in 1991, it's amazing to see the devastating deterioration from the last 10 years on the bottom of the North Atlantic. The Andria Doria will always be a symbol. Whether you look at her as a deep wreck that tests those who dive her, or as the majestic luxury liner she once was. Either way, the Andria Doria, like the Titanic, reminds us of the price of hubris and the limits of technology.